Hello and welcome back to another episode of Perusing the Panels. I'm your host, EmAr Comics, and today we're moving from books to consoles as we delve into the topic of superhero video games. Now, we've had a whole host of different superhero video games, some good, some not so good, but today I want to talk about some characters who either haven't had their time in the limelight or definitely deserve another shot. Because let's be honest, a lot of superheroes have gotten video games, but not all of them are a Batman Arkham Asylum or a Spider-Man 2018. So let's go over some superheroes who haven't had that shot yet. Alright, so starting off, we're going to talk about probably like the most underrepresented character like in comic book history. I've never seen like a good Batman game that just like flew off the shelves, and obviously I'm kidding. Starting off, I do want to talk about probably my favorite comic book character of all time though, which is Green Arrow, in case you didn't know. In case my entire like aesthetic online wasn't clear enough, Green Arrow is by far my favorite character of all time. And the fact that he hasn't had a video game is insane to me. Like, he hasn't had some 80s side-scrolling beat-em-up or like some crappy 2001 PS2 tie-in or whatever. He's just never had a video game. Outside of like the Lego games or Injustice, he just never got that kind of representation, which is insane to me. And especially because, like, if you really think about it, every modern video game has a bow and arrow mechanic to some degree. Like you got Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption, Ghost of Tsushima, Tomb Raider. Every modern game just has a bow and arrow, but nobody's thought to make an entire game about the superhero who uses a bow and arrow. And especially because like his arsenal lends itself really well to a video game mechanic. You know, like you got your trick arrows, you got your bola arrows, your sleeping gas arrow, your boxing glove arrow, your grappling hook arrow. I just mean like there's a lot of potential for a Green Arrow video game. It's like just like laying right there and nobody wants to pick it up. And then you've got Star City could like form as like a really good backdrop for like the for the open world. You know, because you can base it on like Seattle to differentiate it from Gotham City from like the Batman Arkham games, or Metropolis from the new Suicide Squad game. So like Star City just opens itself up really well to that. Give him like a grappling hook arrow, or like what's it called, it's like a motorcycle. That's usually how he gets around. And then, like, for supporting cast, you got the entire Arrow family at your disposal. You've got Connor Hawke, you got Arsenal, or Speedy, or Red Arrow, whatever you want to call Roy Harper. You got Mia Dearden Speedy, you got Emiko Queen, if you want to throw her in there, depending on, like, what kind of continuity you're leaning towards. And obviously expanding to, like, other superheroes, you got Green Lantern, Black Canary, like, all these characters that are very important to Oliver Queen, you can throw into this game. Like, whether they're playable characters, or just, like, other characters who show up throughout the story mode. Like, there's a lot of potential with a Green Arrow video game, and I do not understand how nobody's tapped into it. And especially, like, with the story, I feel like you could definitely tell a good Green Arrow story, because, if anything, so, not to sound like, oh, super uptight and pedantic, but Green Arrow stories have always had, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it so I don't sound like a dick, but Green Arrow storylines, if you look at, like, the classic, like, you know, you got your Mike Grell run, or, like, the Dennis O'Neil, they have a lot more, not grit, but maturity to them than a comic storyline, where Green Arrow doesn't, a lot of people give flack to Green Arrow for not having a super expansive rogues gallery with all the famous costumed villains, and, like, even Arrow, like, the TV show, had to borrow from, like, Batman's rogues gallery and Flash. But the reason he doesn't have a rogues gallery as expansive as anybody else in the comic book world is because Green Arrow doesn't really fight supervillains as much as he does just like more of a moral failing. You know? I mean, I mean that in the sense of like Green Arrow is a very politically driven character. Ever since like Dennis O'Neil took over the character back in, what was it, like, I think it was 62. But ever since his run, Green Arrow has been very much a politically driven, liberal, loudmouthed hothead. And so a lot of his storylines are more so taking on these failings within our capitalist society more so than, like, villains. And I'm not saying that you can't throw in a supervillain-driven storyline. I mean, like, a Count Vertigo boss fight where, like, his effect messes with their controls would be amazing. Like, I'm not saying that. But I am saying there is a lot to say about his story that you can tell with a Green Arrow video game. So that's just one idea out there, is just Green Arrow not having a video game is absolutely insane to me. So I I had to get that off my chest first, otherwise like I would have driven myself mad this entire video. So basically just out there. Green Arrow video game, DC, make it happen. James Gunn, call me up, man. I know you're doing video games for DC now. Hit me up. All right, I'm right here at EmAr Comics. You got this. So, Green Arrow, obviously number one pick. I need Green Arrow to have a video game. Let's hop over to Marvel though, because there is one character in the Marvel universe who was supposed to get a video game. I think back in like, I want to say it was like the early PS1 days. I think it was like the N64 PS1. But there was a canceled video game called Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. And I think about this video game a lot because it was supposed to be not super open world, because like, about as open world as like, Mario 64 was. But it was supposed to be a celebration of all of Daredevil's history. You'd have unlockable costumes. You would adapt different moments from like different eras of like Daredevil. It was supposed to be a really cool game. And it got canceled. And I don't know. I think Daredevil could have a very, very cool game. But I think especially looking back at like that old game, because like, it was one of the early days of video games. Or not video games, a superhero video game. So it was just kind of focused on what can you do as like a fighting game. But I feel like with Daredevil, you can definitely do kind of a lawyer by day, superhero by night storyline. And what I mean by that is have Daredevil go out during the night as Daredevil and do things that would like, obviously stop muggings, progress the storyline. And maybe it's like an optional thing. I don't know if it'd be optional or like main storyline, probably like a mix of both. But let him gain intel that would help him as Matt Murdock defend his clients that are on trial. So I kind of want this game to be half of like, Spider-Man PS4, where you're like running around New York City and beating up criminals. And the other half be borderline Ace Attorney, essentially. And if you guys have ever played, there's a game out there called Sherlock Holmes, The Devil's Daughter. In that game, when you're in conversations, it's like a mini game almost where you look over the character and you pick up on subtle details with their body language and their clothes, and you can pick out certain things. And then by guessing correctly what it means, like, oh, that kid has a bruise. That means, like, and then you either select either he fell and hit his head, his parents are abusive, or it's just like a birthmark. If you select the right one, then in the dialogue, Sherlock finds out more about the kid. Adapt that with Daredevil and have him use his senses to pick up on like, oh, he's bleeding under his shirt and he smells like downtown. And by figuring out by connecting these dots, you progress further into the conversation. I feel like that is probably the best way you can adapt his radar senses, like the Sherlock Holmes way of just picking out small details on someone that nobody else would notice. And then by picking up the intel at night as Daredevil, you can further your case in helping your client. So when you go to trial, you have more of a leg to stand on. You have new dialogue options that allows you to, defend your client more, throw them, further from suspicion, all that stuff. So I feel like a Daredevil game would be really fun. And then even getting into the fighting style, I mean, there was a new game out, Sifu. I got to play a bit of it, but the whole concept is like mixed martial arts fighting style. That game would lend itself really well to Daredevil. And I think I even saw somebody modded Sifu to add a Daredevil skin. So like those fighting mechanics would work really well for Daredevil. I feel like Insomniac would probably do pretty well with that one too, because they're pretty good at keeping like the high momentum acrobatic fighting style of like Spider-Man. And I know they're making the Wolverine game right now, so I feel like they would lend themselves pretty well to Daredevil. As for the voice cast, oh shoot, I didn't talk about the voice cast for the Green Arrow game. We'll circle back to that. But as for like the voice for this one, the only character that I really can think of for like having a definitive voice, I think Roger Craig Smith would be perfect for Daredevil if he leaned more so into like less of his like if you ever seen Batman Unlimited, like that clear voice, I don't think that would work for Daredevil. But if you've ever seen like Batman Arkham Origins, the one where they didn't get Kevin Conroy for it because it's like a younger one, Roger Craig Smith's voice in that one, like that deep gruffness, I feel like that would work really well for Daredevil. Like that, because that's what Daredevil is. He's this dark and kind of grittier street vigilante. So I feel like giving him that deep, gruff voice would work really well for Roger Craig Smith's portrayal. And a lot of people want Troy Baker. And I know Troy Baker has said that he wants to voice Daredevil really badly, but I think he would be a really good casting, but I feel like his voice is almost too clean. Like, even as Joel, I think his voice just comes off as... He's a very clean sounding voice. He's very well spoken. His voice comes through clearly. Whereas I think Roger Craig Smith can lean into that gruffer New York style grit, you know? So I think if I were to cast anybody as Daredevil, it'd probably be Roger Craig Smith. And then, sorry, this is kind of disjointed. I forgot to go over the castings for the Green Arrow one. So I'm going to talk about that one real quick. Personally, I think if you're doing a modern Green Arrow game, Ken Shriner is absolutely my favorite voice for Green Arrow, but I associate him with him. I associate him with a very specific Green Arrow, which is like Phil Hester style, like bulkier, kind of lumberjack looking Ollie, like, you know, like Justice League Unlimited style. Whereas I think if you're doing a Green Arrow game, they probably lean closer to like how he looks in Injustice, kind of that leaner Archer's build, and probably like more of like a modern spin on it. I don't think we'd get like a Green Arrow with like the full Robin Hood look, like as upsetting as that is. It'd probably just be like an unlockable skin. So I feel like if I were to cast somebody for that game, it'd probably be Alan Tudyk. Honestly, I don't know if they would be able to get him. They get him for Injustice, but he only has to come in for like 2 days, maybe at most, just to record, you know, like 20 minutes of cutscenes and then just go ooh ah for like the fight scene. So like, I don't know how easy he is to get for it, but if he would be willing, I think Alan Tudyk would lend himself really well to a full Green Arrow video game. As for the rest of the Arrow family, I'm actually not sure who I could think of for like Connor Hawke and like Roy Harper, because like Connor Hawke has never been adapted into other media except for Arrow in Legends of Tomorrow. I think I haven't seen it, but I heard about that. And I've heard they made some changes to his characters I'm not crazy about, but for the rest of them, I'm not sure who I'd cast. Definitely give Vanessa Marshall back as Black Canary. She is without a doubt like the best voice for Black Canary that we've ever gotten, because she's got this like very badass, like calm voice to her. I think she's fantastic. She was great in Young Justice. She's fantastic as Gamora in the Guardians of the Galaxy show. I love her as Hera in Star Wars Rebels. Vanessa Marshall is like hands down my favorite Black Canary voice. So definitely get her for that. Alan Tudyk if you can. And then for the Daredevil video game, Roger Craig Smith with like that deep Arkham Origins gruff voice, I think would work really well for Daredevil. So moving on from Daredevil, I think the next kind of heavy hitter superhero who I'm like, how have you not gotten a good game, is Superman. And like, Superman has had a ton of video games. Like, I mean, like, you got Superman 64, yeah, but then you got like Superman Returns on like the Xbox 360, but how have we not gotten just like that defining video game for Superman, you know? I think his most recent appearances in, and even like just in like non-main character appearances, like in Injustice we get evil Superman, in Suicide Squad it's about killing him because he's evil again. It's like, we need just like that one good Superman game, you know? And I think there's a game on Steam, I think it's called Unturned. I want to say Unturned, Unbroken, Unbreakable, something like that. I don't remember. I haven't heard anybody talk about it in a couple years. But there is a game where it's like this full like city destroyer mode where you're just playing as like a Superman knockoff. You're just destroying city, and like the game engine works really well for Superman. So if DC could reach out to whoever made that game, I know. And I'm just like this is the one I think I've thought about the least, just because I'm like, it'd be very difficult to adapt Superman into an open world game, just because of like, how much should he be able to destroy the city? How fast should he be able to fly? How fast should he be able to run? Should he be able to have super speed on the ground? Like, there's a lot of factors that go into that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know, just how have you not made the Superman video game yet? You know, and as far as like a story mode, I think, honestly, if you just do a kind of more grounded storyline with Lex Luthor as the villain, maybe like throwing Metallo in there. You know, I'm this is the one that I thought about the least, but just how do we not have a Superman game? Also, if you have a Superman game, you have to throw in a Smallville skin. Like, that's just like, just throw him in like the Blur costume, or just like even just like the blue shirt, red jacket. Just give me Smallville stuff, please. I want to play as Tom Welling. So moving on from the Superman one, just because that one's kind of half baked. This one I think takes a lot of elements from what I posed for the Daredevil game. I think the Question would be an excellent character. Now, the Question, if you don't know him, he's kind of a lesser-known DC character. The Question is, if you know the Watchmen, Rorschach was directly based on Question because at the time he was owned by Charleston Comics. So he's kind of this he's this no-face noir style detective with like, and if you look at like Justice League Unlimited, they kind of lean more into like the crackpot conspiracy theorist, but really he's just a detective. That's kind of his thing. And even it could even be argued on whether or not he's on like the same level as like Batman and Detective Chimp, which, okay, for those of you who don't know, I'm being 100% serious when I say like Detective Chimp is a Batman level detective. We don't have time to talk about him today, but like we'll get into Detective Chimp in like another episode. But the Question, I feel, in a perfect world, I think the Question would get a video game with little to no combat. I think if you're gonna lean into Question, he would be more like, okay, this is gonna be a very strange reach. If you ever played a video game called Nightcab, it was free on the Xbox Game Pass for a while. The whole game is you're a nightcab driver, and you're just driving around at night. You pick up different things. You get a few recurring people in your cab, and you talk to them. You learn new information, and you use it in like this whole drawing board to find out like a hidden mystery type thing. I feel like in a perfect world, the Question would get a more puzzle style game where it's kind of with those investigative elements. Maybe pull in some of the elements I talked about from the Daredevil game, analyzing somebody's body language, figuring out when they're lying, stuff like that, and have it be revolved around solving a mystery or saving a person or something. You know, I feel like Question lends himself really well to a noir mystery puzzle style game, and less of like a generic, less of like the standard superhero combo meter beat 'em up action game, but more of like a thinker type game. You know, I think the Question would lend himself really well to that game. Now for the next one, this one's also one of those characters where like he technically got a video game a couple years ago, but it just wasn't really that good. Aquaman deserves a good video game. Like, okay, so he got Aquaman, I think it was called Battle for Atlantis on the GameCube, and it was just not great. It was it was almost like an on-rails fighter type game, and it wasn't a good representation. It was like a weird tie-in to Justice League Unlimited, if I remember correctly, like based on his design. But like give him, I know I keep saying it, but like an open world Aquaman game would be awesome. Just give him like a huge, well, obviously you can't do the entire ocean, but just a big ocean to explore, and maybe do, I don't remember what city he directly belongs to. I'm gonna admit that I haven't read enough Aquaman to know like which, if he belongs to a specific city. I feel like Coast City is right, but I feel like, no, that's Green Lantern. But I feel like an open world Aquaman game where you just throw him in like a city and then the ocean, just like those two little areas, you know, and then like let it. I just dropped my phone with all of my notes, but so yeah, like an open world that kind of branches between like a human city and Atlantis, I feel like would be really cool, and you can give him like ocean style combat, you know, like whenever he's on land, have him, you know, just kind of be like a brawler type, because he is strong. Like that's one thing that people don't, I think the DCEU kind of captured that element and gave a lot of people the right idea. Aquaman has crazy enhanced strength and enhanced durability. So like play around with that. Let him throw people around, let him use his trident to just like throw someone down like an entire city block, like, you know what I mean? And then when he's in the water, obviously you'd have to have some more ocean-based mechanics, have like a swimming system, but like don't make the swimming system feel like the equivalent of when you get in a vehicle in a video game, you know, because the water is second nature to Aquaman. If anything, it's first nature to Aquaman. So moving in the water should feel as natural as moving on land in any other video game. And then obviously you can have like the storyline be about like Black Manta or Orm, or like just like one of his like rogues gallery villains. I feel like Black Manta would probably be the best, just because like with all the crazy technology you could be upgrading over the course of the game. I just don't understand how Aquaman hasn't had a good video game yet. But I think if you were to do it, just give him a small hub area in the water and a small hub area in on land. You know, to really emphasize the connection, like the connecting bridge between Aquaman and those two areas. Okay, so an Aquaman video game, I think it would be awesome. It would go hard. But now for this next one, you have to hear me out. You have to follow me. Walk with me. I think if you take the elements from the Avengers game, now hold on, hear me out. Take out the live service elements. It didn't work. They weren't good. Give it a different engine. Like, obviously, don't do, like, the same engine because it just wasn't made for multiplayer. Give me a different engine. Update the fighting styles, make them more diverse. Give me an Avengers-style Titans game. Whether that be, like, just straight Teen Titans, where it's, like, you got, like, Robin and Kid Flash, or you want to do, like, the adult, like, Titans, where it's, like, Nightwing and, like, Wally West's Flash. But I feel like the Teen Titans deserve a co-op multiplayer video game. But again, that's kind of the difficulty with it, is that each character should have a unique fighting style. And it's hard to find a game where you can do super speed in a multiplayer setting. But I feel like if you get the right developers, you can make it work. Whether it just be like slowing, I don't think you can slow it down because then it's like everybody would have to slow down, but like maybe focus more so on just like speed-based combat rather than like traversal, which would kind of say make him faster than the others, but not so fast that you can't control it. And then obviously like, give Nightwing his acrobatic style, his grappling hooks, his eskrima sticks. Get Starfire, Raven with her dark magic, Donna Troy, just throw like Beast Boy, Cyborg, give us like a good Titans game with like a multiplayer. It could even be like, and again, like I said, based on the Avengers game, but just throw out the live service elements. The live service stuff just didn't work. Did anybody use the gear system? Can I ask you that real quick? Okay, I never once used the gear in the entire game. Maybe that's why I kept dying a lot, but like, I never upgraded the gear. I never messed with any of that stuff. Like, nobody cared about it. I don't know. It was trying to be Destiny, I guess, is what I always heard. I never played Destiny, but that's what everyone says. And I don't know. The Avengers game wasn't a great take, but if you take the certain elements of that and put it into a Titans game, I think it could rock. And then now, I know I said it's hard to capture super speed in like a multiplayer game, but what if you did it in a single player game? Because my next game I want to talk about, kind of the final one, is The Flash needs a video game. Now, if you don't know, okay, so this one like keeps me up at night. I think about this video game all the time. There was a Flash video game in development by a studio called Bottle Rocket Entertainment. They had this awesome concept. You're supposed to be able to run between different cities. They had a great running mechanic. It was based on, it was based on Wally West right after he became the Flash. So like that's why you're still learning everything. It was really cool, and they had like a whole bunch of plans for it. They had like test footage, gameplay, and eventually the studio ended up going under because the way that they tried to run it, like, from what I've heard and what I've read, is they tried to run it. They would take on smaller projects with smaller budgets and release them, but because of the lackluster sales and the reviews coming back, it wasn't sustainable, and the company eventually ended up going under before they could complete the Flash game. But I feel like a Flash video game could work. It could absolutely work. It's just a matter of finding a way to capture that momentum, capture how to run fast in a video game. I think maybe if you combine both like speeding up with slowing down the world around him, I think it could create like a perfectly fine, like make you feel like you're ramping up, like you are going fast, and then as they start to go faster, let it hit a limit and then start to slow down the world around them so it looks like they're going faster. You know what I mean? I feel like that would be a good way to capture like the Flash's speed. His combat system should focus around. I feel like if anything, this one should focus around like combo building and dodging and weaving between enemies and hitting them as fast as you can, because that's the Flash. Let that be like, let him rack up the combo meters. That should be his game. And the storyline, I feel like obviously you got to throw in like Professor Zoom if you're doing like Wally West, which would be, or like Thawne, or like EmAr Thawne, like Reverse Flash if you're doing like Barry Allen. I feel like you could throw in all this stuff. And I feel like if you revived the Flash, the fastest man alive, that was the name of the original one. That was the name of the Bottle Rocket Entertainment one, was the Flash, the fastest man alive. If you take that storyline back and bring that up, make it be Wally West becoming the Flash for the first time. And if you want to throw it into like an expanded universe, let him reference the Titans. I feel like leave them like Easter eggs. I feel it could be the best way to address it. It's like on his computer's open in his apartment and you can see he's messaging like Dick Grayson. So like, minor Easter eggs, like the larger expanded world. But like, I like the idea of making a game about Wally's first time. Maybe even you could lean kind of how Spider-Man Miles Morales did, where it's him dealing with the anxieties and the responsibilities of being the new Spider-Man. You could take that with Wally, but you can push him even further than they did Miles, because Wally's alone. Like, he really has, like, he can call Jay and stuff, but, like, he would be on his own. This would be his first, like, true superhero step. You know, and so if you play into that with your storyline about Wally West stepping up and becoming the Flash and becoming the protector of his city, I feel like that could lend itself to a video game narrative really well. And then, you know, because he's like, you know, he's kind of new to being the Flash. Maybe he doesn't know everything about it, so that's how you get your skill tree. So, like, as he beats up more criminals and progresses further in the story, he can unlock more Speed Force abilities, like the ability to throw lightning or, like, supersonic punch, stuff like that. So if you throw all that in, then you got your skins, you know, okay, real quick, this is like a small tangent. There is absolutely a difference between Barry's and Wally's Flash suits. Barry kind of, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it without, like, showing it. Barry's lightning bolt has a lot more, like, dividends to it. Like, it's got a lot more, like, jags that stick out, as opposed to Wally. Wally's is just like that straight, like, lightning bolt, whereas Barry's is kind of like more jagged, it's longer. You know, so that's like the first big difference. And then in the comics, Wally's suit is, I don't know if it's supposed to be more reflective, but it's got like a different, it's got a very different material to it, where it's kind of, it hits light differently, and it's a lot darker and shinier. So, like, that's another big difference. There's, like, one panel where, like, they're literally standing side by side, and it's, like, super different. And then Wally has, like, the white eyes, whereas Barry always has, like, you know, them baby blues on display. So that's another big difference, is the white eyes, and then the beak, like the nose beak. Wally's cowl covers his nose, whereas Barry's leaves it out. So, like, there's definitely a lot of differences between Wally's and Flash's suits. Wally's and Barry's suit. I feel like nobody ever talks about that, but, like, that's always bothered me. There is a very big difference. And a lot of shows, or, like, a lot of adaptations, try and give Barry, like, Wally's costume, and I kind of hate that, but it's whatever. So, yeah, that's my long-winded way of saying you could do skins in this game. I mean, heck, if you want to go all out, give him a Jay Garrick skin. I'd wear that the entire time. I love Jay Garrick. He is by far my favorite Flash. So basically, like, I don't know. I feel like Flash could totally have his own video game. I think Wally West learning to be the new Flash is probably, like, the best way to go about it, because it explains how he's still unlocking abilities. You can lean into kind of that nervous anxiety of, like, being a new superhero on the block. You know, and you can even play into, like, how the rogues react if, like, they figure out, like, hey, this isn't the same Flash, you know? I feel like that could also be very interesting if you play into, because that's the other thing with the Flash, and this applies to both Barry and Wally. The Flash and the rogues, like, and I've been saying rogues a lot this film, so there's like a difference between, like, a rogues gallery and the rogues, because you have, like, Batman has rogues, but Flash has the rogues, which is, like, specifically that's like the team of Flash villains. They teamed up, they call themselves the rogues. Just to clear up any confusion. The rogues don't hate Flash. If anything, they actually kind of get along with him in a weird sense that, like, if they weren't opposed by the law, then they would probably be friends. Because the Flash always checks in on them. Like, you know, they have a mutual respect for Flash. So I feel like if you focus in on them knowing that Wally isn't the original Flash, I feel like that could be interesting to see play out. So anyway, okay, so those are all my ideas. So what have we got? We got a Green Arrow game, we got a Daredevil game, Superman, Question, Aquaman, Teen Titans, and Flash. So those are my pitches for just a couple of DC games. I mean, I'll probably do another video on this one, probably get some more thoughts, like, more collected, because if you can't tell, this one was very loose. Like, I have some notes for, like, a lot of the games, but then Aquaman, I just wrote down, let me read this out. Aquaman, I wrote down water and land. I don't know why I wrote down water and land, as if I'd forget that, but those are my notes for the Aquaman bit. So yeah, basically, there are a lot of superhero games out there, but there are a lot of superheroes who deserve games that haven't gotten them because, you know, we just get Batman, Spider-Man again. I feel like there's a lot you can lean into. I'm definitely going to do a follow-up to the video because I like this topic a lot. Whenever I do a follow-up, I'm probably going to articulate my thoughts better. But as for now, thank you guys so much for listening. Next week, or not not next week, but I think what I'm going to be doing for my release schedule is I'm going to be doing bi-weekly, which means I'm going to do 1 week and then 1 week without a podcast, and then it'll release the next week after that. So I'm going to be doing bi-weekly releases. My next episode, I'll be bringing a guest on, and if things don't fall through, we should be talking about costume designs, essentially, and like adapting them from the page to the screen. So stay tuned for that. If you guys have any feedback, again, let me know. You can always tell me. Just publicly shame me on Twitter. That's EmAr Comics, EmAr Comics. So just tweet at me why you think my podcast sucks. I'll be more than happy to hear it. So thank you again for listening, and I really hope you guys stick around.